Hey, Geekscapists, welcome to a brand new Geekscape podcast. I've got some really big nerds on the show right now. I just doing research for this conversation we're about to have. I could not believe how completely geeky these guests are, and you may not think it. Because Scott Adkins is a major action star, and Harry and George, who directed the movie, well, I know their last names are Kirby, like Jack Kirby, but it turns out these directors are pretty big geeks too. They have a brand new movie called Accident Man. It's a sequel to the original Accident Man that came out a few years ago, also based on a comic book. But this one's called Hitman's Holiday, and Scott co-wrote the script. And watching this thing, y'all had a lot of fun. Maybe Scott didn't have fun. You get bounced around like a ping pong ball, but you must have had fun on the first one if you came back for number 2.
I don't have fun on any of my movies. Most of my movies is me getting thrown around and smashed off concrete. That's not fun. But I do it because it seemed like a good idea when I was 10.
Is there a certain limit where like you've just been bounced around so much that you're like, once you're done with the movie and you go through something like this, like you do the press, you get to see the reaction to the film, people get enthusiastic about it, it's worn off and you're like, yeah, I kind of forgot about the bouncing around part. And then when you're strapped up on set ready to do a stunt, you're like, oh right, we have to do this thing.
No, I'm watching those fights with PTSD like, oh, I remember that bit. Oh.
But you had these two guys, Harry and George Kirby, co-directing. This is your first feature, guys, but y'all came out of you do stunts, and y'all do stunts for some of the biggest geek movies out there, all these Marvel films, and then you've done a ton of these like fan shorts that are, you know, I mean, I'm looking at this, and if y'all are making Dragon Ball Z shorts, like if you're making Dragon Ball Z like fan films, you got your geek cred pretty locked up.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we that last 10 years we've been making kind of YouTube shorts, and they all tend to be pretty geeky. So we did like a Batman short, we did an X-Men cable, short film, some live action Dragon Ball Z. So yeah, we were firmly making like kind of geek shorts, but a lot of it involved action and stunts because of George's background. He was able to kind of wrangle in the stunt guys to come and help us do some cool action stuff in our short films. And then that kind of led us forward to working with Scott because George kind of worked with Scott. But yeah, actually, that's where I first met Scott was on Doctor Strange, and I was doubling Benedict, and we had a few short scenes together. Scott actually threw me down some stairs.
I would have kicked his ass if it wasn't for you.
Yeah, and so yeah, that's first met Scott was on that Marvel movie, Doctor Strange. Yeah,
and y'all got together on that on Scott Derrickson's movie, who's also a geek, who's also worked with us here at Geekscape, and y'all hit it off as stuntmen, as stunt fanatics, and comic book fans, or where did that relationship kind of start up?
I think, like I say, we had like 2 or 3 little short scenes maybe, and I know you thought there's another stunt double, Leo, who I think had a bigger fight part with Scott. I was off with Benedict, I think, and so I think we spent loads of time together, I think, but. Yeah, well, we kind of got back in contact with Scott because we'd written a film ourselves. It was like an action zombie type film, and we'd made like a proof of concept, like a 6-minute kind of short film that we showed Scott, and we were like, basically, Scott, who's going to come do our movie? And then he basically was like, really like the short guide, let's see what we're doing. Look, the short version is he set us up. He didn't like the script, which is absolutely fine. But Scott
didn't then said say that bit.
Scott was like, look, maybe polite about it. Yeah, he was really polite about it. And he basically said, look, maybe we'll get to work together in the future. We were like, great, we'd love the opportunity. And then a few weeks later, we get a call from Scott basically saying, how do you feel about coming to direct Accident Man 2 or Accident Man Hitman's Holiday? And we were like, yeah, of course. So really, Scott kind of gave us our opportunity with this, so we're very grateful to him. So that's how it kind of happened in the end.
I'm still waiting for my beer, guys. I've got to say, Jonathan. As soon as I knew that the director of Accident Man 1 was doing something else and couldn't do it, I'd seen the short that they did, and my first thought was those guys have got the perfect style for Accident Man 2 because they checked all the boxes. One, they're English, which is important to me in terms of that, English sensibility. Two, they understand the action on a deep level, and I don't have to worry myself about that like I do on some other movies. And three, they really were leaning in on the comedy, which is something I wanted to improve on from the first film. I wanted to go more into the comedic side. And something that I wasn't necessarily that aware of and really came in handy was that they're good with the visual effects. So they had so many strings to their bow, and they sent me that short. When I watched it, I was completely blown away by it. I mean, legitimately, I thought this is great. This is brilliant directing here. The choice of shots that they had and everything, the way they told the story, the sensibility, the comedy. But no, they're going to be great. Accident Man 2. I was trying to play it cool on the phone with you guys, but in my heart was like, God, please say yes, because I just knew it was going to be perfect.
And then they go and drop a script on you. Is it a no, or is it a not right now on the zombie thing?
I was like, forget that script. Here's mine.
Exactly. Yeah.
Robert Rodriguez told me a story about like this when he was doing Spy Kids. He had a deal with the Weinsteins, and they were like, hey, that Spy Kids thing sounds great and everything, but you got to do the faculty first. Like, we'll give you 4 pictures, but the first one has to be ours. And I'm just wondering if we're going to see that zombie thing, because as geeks here on Geekscape, that zombie thing sounds, I don't know. I mean, what if Scott rewrites it? Because he wrote this one and it's pretty funny and entertaining. I think y'all found like the biggest proponent for the zombie fan, for the zombie film. Scott, taking the reins on the Accident Man franchise and writing this script, what was the story there? And like, obviously, you're also thinking about your own physical abilities and like making it through a arduous shoot schedule, all the stunts you've got to do, but also picking your spots. And this is a movie, Geekscapists, I think you're going to love, because right off the bat, it's super hilarious. It's fun. It has the sensibilities that y'all were talking about. But you got to pace yourself. You got to think about, not just pacing yourself on set, but you're also pacing yourself with the comedy. You're also pacing yourself with the action. You don't want to wear the audience out. Movies like this has to be paced on multiple different. You're spinning multiple plates, and they all have to be paced appropriately. Does that make sense, guys?
That makes sense, and that was the initial idea. But then, and you schedule it thinking, let's space the fights out. We'll do like 1 fight a week or something like that. And then, of course, the inevitable, that we've lost that location, and so now you're going to have to do the first 4 fights, one after another. And so, cheers for that. Cheers for that, guys. No, but it's just the nature of making these independent movies that there's a lot of chaos around that you have to try and sift through. And sometimes the last thing you're doing is actually the making of the movie. There's all this other chaos going on that you've got to sort out. But yes, I am the producer as well, so I've only got myself to blame.
And you guys, this is the first time you'll have shot something that's this long. I mean, obviously you've been on feature films, but now that you're directing it, and again, the idea of pacing it out, how many days y'all shoot this thing over? I'm guessing it's more than the Goku short film.
It was, yeah, just about, yeah. So I mean, we had like 22 days to shoot the film. Put it in perspective, I mean, I know they're vastly different kind of movies, but like the latest Bond movie, for example, was 125 days of filming, so we have 22. So it's a very fast paced, very fast moving. But we did a lot of planning before in terms of the action. Scott was kind enough to kind of get together with us and some of the other guys, and we previous the action. So we kind of, we actually worked out all the action before we got out to Malta, and a lot of it, and shot a rough version of it and kind of edited together so that once we get on set, we can literally say, this is the fight, this is how we're going to shoot it, and we've already got all that planned out, so we're not wasting any time once we're on set.
When you're doing that in your, because I mean, I think that's required on a movie, especially with a tight schedule like this. You have under a month to shoot something, like you said, that it usually takes well over a month, because there are so many shots in an action movie. A lot of these shots are only on screen for a minute, but I got to say, y'all have a pretty fluid camera. You carry the shots a lot longer than the typical action movie. That'll just be like, hey, let's just chop, and that'll save the stunts, that'll save the performances. I don't think it's fun to watch, though. I think part of it is the choreography. Part of it is the artistry of the dance that is these stunts. When you're choreographing these things, in advance, how does it change the script? How does it change the story? Were there any beats that you discovered do not work or affect the larger narrative of the film once you're doing the pre-choreography on tape and cutting together rough versions of these fights?
When we did the previs, the guys, I was busy doing stuff, but they'd gone out to look at the locations. So they'd seen some locations, and then we started prevising the fights. So we prevised the fight to this location, which of course, by the time we were making the movie, we'd lost it. We'd lost that location.
Well, that can't bounce up that wall.
Locations, actually. Two locations. But unfortunately, this is the nature of like filming an independent movie, but so I'll let you guys answer the rest.
But yes, I think that's really where having performers like Scott and our other assassins, Andy Long and Sarah Chang and all the guys that perform are martial artists themselves. They're fighters, they're screen fighters. They know adapt to these changes, and it doesn't doesn't completely screw us. We don't have to go, okay, well, they're not going to have to do that, so we'll have to cut this and hide that or do that. We can adapt and still keep all the action in shot. We don't have to compromise on our shots and stuff. So it was always just a matter of, right, okay, well, we haven't got that wall there anymore. Let's just split that around and we'll have it go this way instead. And just on the day, we have, especially like people like Andy Long and Sam Mack, who were there, while we were shooting some of the dialogue scene stuff. They're thinking ahead to the fight scene and going, okay, well, in the new space that we've got, a new location, and saying, okay, we can change that to there. So by the time we get to shoot it, they've already sort of thought those things ahead. So having those guys who understand action and how to adapt and change it, I think really helped us to get through those fights and make them
Jonathan, I'll tell you that. Sorry, Harry. Because George has got his expertise as a stuntman. A lot of the times he was in there with me holding the camera and operating. Not all the time.
Sure.
But a lot of the time he's in there because of his experience as a fight, doing fight scenes with other stunt people. He's able to predict and remember the choreography, as a stuntman because he's a stuntman. And that really helps out a lot of the times. And that's why you can get those fluid shots. And both Harry and George, they love to keep the camera moving in that way. And they don't want to keep it static. They want to keep it moving all the time. Sometimes I'm like, wow, you really like spinning around in circles. But that's what they do so well. And that's why they're so good at their job.
Yeah, you don't want to run into the performer. The performers have to dance with the camera as much as they're dancing with each other on this thing. And again, like this stuff gets, dangerous when there's stunts involved. And also in Geekscape, I want you to actually appreciate the fact that this is a 22-day shoot schedule with moving parts like locations because like this stuff has to get planned out arduously, which like when it comes to the script, when it comes to the comedy of it, how much was there improv, Harry? Because obviously keeping the energy high is a huge component to a movie like Accident Man because it's all about energy. It's all about the pop of it. It's a comic book come to life. Yeah. Was there room to improvise, not just in the fight scenes, which sounds like because of location stuff, you had to improvise a little bit, but within the performances as well?
Yeah, definitely. Everyone kind of definitely did like their own little bits of improvisation, including Scott. We were very lucky in that we've got, Perry Benson is playing Fred, and then we've got George Fouracres who's playing Dante. Both those guys are very good at kind of just, we get to the end of the take and they just throw a little wet thing extra in there or, the extra line. George was very good at every time he'd kind of do a take, he would change what he's saying because obviously him and Scott are bantering back and forth. So they're kind of like insults would change at each other and all that kind of stuff. We'd let them improve that because at the end of the day, all that matters is that they're arguing. It doesn't matter specifically what they're saying. So the guys got to do some fun improv. Same with Sarah Chang. Like Scott was very much like I want us two to be kind of going at each other and kind of to get that that argumentative feel. So we would kind of do a couple of takes. Then after a couple, they'd both start changing the insults, throwing things around. Sarah would be speaking Cantonese, so we didn't necessarily know what she was saying.
Yeah. Well, I don't know how we ended up with that bit, but when she goes,
let's just go with it.
You just start shouting at me in Cantonese. And I said, what do you say? I don't speak Cantonese. He just goes, motherfucker. And that was the complete improv.
Yeah. I think also, like, you know, especially like for Scott, you know, and Perry and Ray, you know, coming from the first film, just them already understanding the characters. You know, they're bringing those characters from the first film through this one, and so all those, you know, Scott and Ray and Perry were able to go, well, you know, I think maybe he'd do this and say this, and just, you know, make some tweaks and stuff, which I think really, you know, elevates it, especially between like Ray and Scott in the bar and stuff. You know, the tension that is created there, I think, is really nice. And Ray, you know, I think, you know, Ray, his presence, you know, he's such an intimidating and.
My God, I just saw him on they showed an IMAX version of Triple R here on Friday night in LA. That movie's fucking incredible, and Ray's great in it. Ray is just awesome in it. Speaking of choreography and action, was improvising lines and changing stuff on the fly, was that your way of getting back at Scott for not liking your zombie script? Is that what was going on?
No, I mean, Scott was
all that matters. All that matters is the finished product. So as long as it's funny, that's why it's like he calls me a melted Ben Affleck. And even though I'm like, I don't want to be compared to Ben Affleck again, it's so funny that we've had to put it in the movie, and it's ended up in the trailer.
Yeah.
The one thing I did want to ask y'all about is, even though with all the silliness that sometimes is going on in this movie, Geekscape, is with the action, with the pop, with the really loud villains, this movie ultimately, like when I got down to it, and Ray was a part of this, it's a movie about loyalty and friendship. It kind of is. I'm seeing two brothers here, Harry and George, making a movie together. Scott, how much was that an influence once they got added to the project, or how much of it was in the original seeds of this movie, that it had the emotional grounding, really, of a story about friendship and loyalty?
Well, I think we'd written the scripts before the brothers came on, but certainly that was something I remember you guys catching on to and really wanting to push home the theme of friendship. And family being the theme for the movie. But yeah, the script was already done, although George and Harry had some great suggestions about the structure, and we continually made the scripts better and better once they came on.
Yeah, like Scott said, that was already kind of in the script, that Fred is the kind of, you know, the thing that Fallon is looking to save, so it's important to him in the film. But we definitely wanted to really make that the kind of Fallon's arc, I suppose, in the film, that he really learns that friendship is important, and that, you know, give him someone to care about. Because, you know, the fun thing with this film is that if you stop and think about the characters, they're all terrible people, they're murderers, they're assassins, that kind of stuff. But if you can make the audience, you know, have something to empathize with, and everyone can empathize with, like, friends and family and caring about them and stuff. So it gives something for everyone to kind of latch onto the Fallon and the other characters. Yeah, really root for Mike to win, you know, and save Fred. So I think that was definitely important.
But something you were very particular on with me as well was to make sure that the character was likable, because maybe in the first film he didn't come off as likable as he could have done. I mean, we're dealing with revenge and all the rest of it in the first movie, so that didn't help. But definitely they lent on me heavily to make sure that the character lightened up a bit, to be honest.
I think there are a couple parts in the film where you end up at a hurdle, and the solution might just be, hey, we're going to put down the weapons, and I'm going to give you a chance to actually build a relationship here, even if it's with another lethal assassin. But y'all are all in the same, y'all are peers, basically. Y'all are professional peers. Yeah. And a lot of the narrative hinges on whether or not that offer is accepted or not. Right, and sometimes it's accepted off screen, where, you know, some of this, I don't want to spoil the movie, Geekscape, but that those sequences are, hey, we can escalate this as enemies, or we can kind of find a middle ground here and forge some kind of a friendship. This is like Stand By Me with people trying to kill each other. It's not. That was a joke. But I found that to be the nice emotional grounding to a movie that is kind of off the rails by design.
Yeah, I mean, that's exactly what we wanted. We wanted it to be, it's exactly the blend that you talked about. Scott really wanted to kind of amp up the comedy in this, so it's that blend of, like, just fun comedy, but then really cool action. So then when you're watching the action, you're like, whoa, you know, it's really cool. But then some emotional stuff as well that makes you care about the characters. Because, you know, as cool as the action is, if it's for nothing, if it's like just a fight for the sake of a fight, then it's never as good. But when you're like rooting for the character to win for a good reason, it always makes action better, in our opinion. So
that's part of shading his character towards likability, is saying, hey, like, he is fairly reluctant to do this, right? Like, I mean, if you look back at like the Cheyenne Fat Assassin films and things like that, like, these are all reluctant assassins. These are people who they found themselves in the right line of work, that it's their skills. Finding the material, Scott, on that original Accident Man, I didn't have you on Geekscape, would love to. I mean, some of your films, I'm just like, oh man, it'd be awesome to have him on the show. The original Accident Man, finding this material from some of the, I mean, I think 2000, every time I'm in the UK, I come back with one of those big, like, 2000 AD books, right?
Yeah.
What was it like grabbing that material and then continuing it? Are you a big reader of the 2000 AD stuff or the comic book stuff?
Wouldn't say a big reader, but certainly aware of 2000 AD and Judge Dredd and some of the other characters. So Pat Mills was the writer of Accident Man, who also wrote Judge Dredd. And I found the comic book when I was 14 years old, and I loved it, and I just kept it, and the dog had eaten it and all sorts. And I always thought to myself, this would make a great movie. Somebody's got to make this into a film. I'm sure they will, but they never did. I found out since that a big producer actually had the property option for ages, and for whatever reason, he didn't make it. Lucky for me, because when I decided to go ahead and option the rights, I had a meeting with the creators, and I remember walking in to meet them, and they were straight away, there he is, Mike Fallon. It looks just like him. And I'm like, oh, this is going well. And so I managed to do a good deal with those guys that allowed me to write it with my friend Stu, that I've known from school. So, you know, it's such a very personal project for me. And then we got it over to Sony and we got it made. But yeah, to be here now talking about Accident Man 2 as a 46-year-old, knowing that I got that comic book when I was 14, I'm definitely aware of how cool that is and the circular nature of the whole thing. It's very cool.
And guys, would you all follow this up with another genre film? I mean, it looks like Harry and George, that's kind of the lane they're in. They love the genre stuff, the comic book stuff. What's next for all you guys?
Well, I mean, we're kind of we're looking into our zombie movie. There's a few things happening in the background with that, so hopefully that's going to be, you know, a potential. We've been chatting with Scott about some bits and bobs as well. So like, yeah, there's some things going on. The dream for us, you know, in the distant future, would be to direct the new Ninja Turtles movie. That would be like our fantasy film to make, or maybe Dragon Ball Z as well. But yeah.
You didn't like the live action one? You didn't like that live action? I'm kidding. I mean, no. One of the biggest highlights of doing Geekscape is having Kevin Eastman over to do a Geekscape with me, and just as a Turtles fan, that's great. And I can't wait to see Scott in that Turtles film. It sounds like they hot potatoed the zombie script to somebody else. But what's next for you?
Well, it's John Wick 4 for me.
Yeah, that looks amazing. I'm stoked for that.
I'm excited as well. Can't wait to see it. I can't believe they put it back till March. How dare they?
I just love that they're using the films, and I mean they're made by stuntmen as well, stunt performers as well. I just love that they're using it as a celebration of action heroes, and they're bringing in people like Don the Dragon Wilson and all these people just to be celebrated in the films. I think it's amazing. No, I said Don the Dragon Wilson. It's Mark Dacascos. It's Mark Dacascos. Jonathan.
Don the Dragon.
Yeah, Don the Dragon would be amazing. It's not going to happen, but Mark Dacascos would have been in the last one was fantastic. All right, Geekscape. The movie is called Accident Man, Hitman's Holiday. Go check it out. It comes out on the 14th later this week. So, guys, thanks for coming on Geekscape, and thanks for talking about the film.
Thank you for having us. Appreciate it. Thank you.
Bye, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.